101 kind of made me laugh when I thought. Oh, you are? Okay. I'm gonna go, well, I'm gonna go sit.
Oh,
So,
I'll join you in a second.
all right. So it kind of made me laugh when I saw investment 101, because I was like, Trevor's like way past 101.
Yeah. He's
But
gonna teach us how to 101.
the thing that I thought would be interesting, because I get questions all the time, and sometimes I'm just like, you should talk to Trevor. But I get questions all the time about what Trevor's doing differently, and then also just about investment in general. So one of the things that, we've been doing throughout the year is either panels, or we're gonna do some agent spotlights, and just have some of the agents in the brokerage share their story. Like, where did they get started? How did they end up where they were? And Trevor's business is very specific to a style that he likes and wants to do. So we thought it'd be fun to interview him. We're gonna put him in hot seat. All right.
Okay.
So I sent him some questions. We're gonna interview. Are you ready?
I am.
You were born ready, huh?
Yep.
All right, so Trevor, why don't you just start first telling us a little bit about yourself and your
With my
backstory?
face is kind of confusing. Like,
Yeah,
face here, do I face here?
Face here, like, let's pretend like we're like on an actual talk
Okay,
show.
let's do it.
We'll kind of talk a little bit to each other, but mostly to the audience.
Okay, fantastic. So, I'm Trevor, for anybody that doesn't know me. Grew up in South Ogden. My dad was a real estate investor, part-time real estate investor. He had a W-2 job, but he did a lot of investing in it. So I kind of grew up around the industry a little bit. A lot of times on Sundays and things, we would be out looking at houses or driving neighborhoods looking for deals, that sort of a thing. I graduated high school. I was probably the only kid in my graduating class that when I went into my sophomore year, I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to sell houses and be a developer. And we're kind of still working back towards that, but I graduated in 2008. I already had jobs lined up. One of my dad's really good buddies is a local broker here. I was going to go start selling houses with him. And then actually another one of our really good friends was a new construction builder at the time. The builder went out of business before I graduated, so that job went away. And then the broker, I started talking with the broker, and he says, hey, look, I've got a bunch of agents that have been in business like 20 years and they're not doing too good. They're having to go get jobs, some stuff like that. So he's like, I think it's still great. You want to get licensed, but just know it's going to be a struggle. And I kind of thought, oh, dude, that sucks. Like, that doesn't sound fun. So I jumped into sales in another industry. And I don't regret doing that. I do wish that I would have gotten licensed and kind of just started doing the real estate thing like I had planned right from the beginning, but that wasn't the case. And I don't regret it because I learned a lot of really good sales skills, how to talk to people, negotiate deals, kind of find that happy medium. And then ended up coming back into real estate about 6 years ago, or not back in, but getting in full-time about 6 years ago. While I was with my previous company, I still was buying houses and building a little bit of a rental portfolio here and there. And but I kind of just made that click in my mind in that previous career that I wasn't going anywhere. I was where I was going to end up. I pretty much tapped out. I mean, I was doing great for a younger kid. I was in my early 20s, making $120,000 a year. You know, I was doing really well, especially for at the time that was like 2010. You know, but I was never going to achieve that next level that, you know, I wanted. So I made the jump and got into sales, and that's kind of what we did. So I was that's about 6 years ago.
Okay.
We did that. So
you got into sales, and what do you think caused the excitement to go into more? Because you definitely do a unique style of real estate.
Yeah.
So what got you more excited about the investing in real estate versus just traditional resale or sales in real estate?
yeah, so one thing, the big thing that kind of pushed me away from that other industry was I was where I was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I could work for 30 years in that organization, and if I died, that was it. Like, that's the paychecks are going to stop next week, and whatever I've built over the last 30 years, that's what we're going to have to live on. Or if I didn't die, you know, that's what, if they let me go, that's it. There's nothing else there. And that scared the shit out of me, you know, thinking, hey, I could put 30 years into this organization and one day it's done. And so when I went and started doing investment deals, I mean, I already had rentals and things like that, but I really kind of started looking at what would it take to fund my entire life doing this, and came up with a plan. And that plan's kind of evolved and grown and changed quite a bit over the last few years, especially the last few years, but anyways, that's kind of.
If you guys know Trevor too, when he says what it would take to fund my entire life, this isn't like a tiny little life he's talking about, guys.
Yeah.
This isn't like he wants to retire and have his house paid off kind of life. Like,
Yeah.
this is a big life, right?
Yeah, I've been known to blow through some money.
I think that your hunting budget alone for some people would boggle their mind. Annually.
Yeah.
And speeding.
Oh, and you gotta have.
Speeding tickets, yeah, so it's, yeah.
I mean,
Ogden's
let's
sitting
go
pretty much
across
on
the
my payroll
road.
at this point, so. Hey, so here's my view on speeding, right? You're just paying tolls to go as fast as you want. And it saves me hours of time every month, and so it's worth a couple $100 here.
It's a line item on his budget.
It is.
I love it. Okay, tell me, so I want to reverse to something you said. You already had a couple investments by this point.
Yep.
So when you got into real estate 6 years ago, how many rental properties did you have at that point?
That point in time, I think I had 3 or 4.
Okay.
5 maybe. I did sell a few of them. In fact, my little brother's an agent in the office. He bought a duplex from me. And that's kind of how I funded the beginning of my fix and flip business was
Okay.
selling some of those properties.
What do you credit your success in the business to, in this industry?
That one's kind of tough because it kind of changes. You just need to be willing to adapt, you know, and one thing for me, like I know that I've got extremely expensive stuff that I like to do. And so it's kind of like, am I willing to, if I'm not willing to go out and create it and do it, what am I willing to give away? You know, like,
Yeah.
For me, that's hunting, obviously, or fishing, all of it. Like I spend a bunch of time in Alaska every year. I'm going to Alberta next week for 10 days. Like that's what I do. And I spend ungodly amounts of money doing it. And if I didn't do what I am doing, I wouldn't be able to afford to do it. And so you just kind of have to do it.
It's the
You know,
drive.
like,
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's because if not, it's like, what's the point? If you're not gonna go out and live the life that you want to have, then what's the point of even hustling? Because anybody can go sell 4, 5, 6 houses a year and make their bills.
Yeah.
You know, but what else? What else do you want to do? So that's what I've just gotten really good at is identifying those big things in my life that make me get excited. Like if it raises my heart level thinking about it, I'm gonna go make it happen. And unfortunately, those are like big things that take time, you know, but so.
Love that. What do you think? I'm gonna go off script a little bit.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So
I didn't
talking
even read the
about.
questions you sent me.
This is totally off. The whole thing's off.
Yeah,
script.
that's.
So when you say like, but figuring out those things that make you excited and saying, if I don't do this, what am I gonna give up? What are some of the daily things? What are the things that you do every day that you know, like, if I do these things every single day, it's gonna lead to a result that I need? What are your daily habits?
For me, that's find the deal, right? Where's the next deal at? So I know that my guys can turn a deal usually in 30 to 45 days. And so I know, okay, when did we start this project? This is about when it should be done. We need to go get another deal because it's the type of deals that I'm looking for. You don't just, it's not like we're gonna go just, hey, I need a listing. Oh shoot, it's Thursday. I need a listing by next Wednesday and you're gonna go get a listing. Now anybody can do that. It's fairly straightforward, but the type of properties that I'm looking for, you can't just go do that. It takes a little bit more effort than that, a little bit more time. And so you just got to go get the deal, look for the deal that works for your system and what your strategy is, because everybody's strategy is different. And then go look at a lot of those types of deals and pick out the one that you want. Go ahead.
How did you find I wouldn't say the money, but how do you find the money to get started in that? Usually you have to have 20% down. Did you just save for it?
So the types of deals that I'm buying close for cash. So you need more than 20%. You got to come up with, if you're buying a $300,000 house.
When you first started buying your investment.
If you find a deal, the money will find you. I promise. Nick, how many times have I said that? If you find the deal, the money will show up. Like if you've got an honest to God, awesome deal, you don't need to worry about the money.
How do you determine, what do you do to analyze the ROI and if it's the type of property that you want to buy?
So when I'm looking at deals and underwriting deals, I run them 2 different ways. I look at what is this property worth when it's done,
Okay,
clearly, because we need to know that. Whether somebody comes to me and says, hey, here's a deal, this is what we need for it. And then you kind of can work from there and see, but if I'm making an offer and it's like, hey, we have no idea what this thing is worth. Like I walked one with Brooke a couple weeks ago, that cat house.
okay.
So I mean, they kind of had an idea. I knew that they were probably off by a lot, and I told Brooke that the numbers based on what she was saying weren't gonna work. But we went and saw it anyways, and he kind of just reverse engineered the math. So what's the house worth? How much am I thinking that the repairs are gonna be? And that's something that you just gotta get on some deals. I mean, that's just experience. Go ahead, Brooke.
So I'm gonna go back to what you just said, to
Yeah.
her question, don't worry about the money, because at some point we do need to worry about the money, Trevor. So are you saying, like, if you find a deal, whether or not you have the cash, you could then maybe look at other people's money? and say,
Absolutely.
"Hey, let me get a hard money loan." so
Absolutely,
it's still-
absolutely, yeah. So for example, let's say that we're talking $250,000 purchase price houses. And I have enough deals lined up that I could close 5 million bucks by next Wednesday. If I had all of the deals, right? I don't have $5 million in cash, but it would take me about 20 minutes on my phone to go raise the 5 million bucks.
It's the connections you made over the years.
Yeah, exactly. And once you've established yourself as, hey, this is a kid that knows what he's doing. He's sharp. He knows his numbers. He does successful deals all the time. He's got a track record of producing successful deals and making money. Investors will throw their money at you, I promise. I get calls every week from guys that I've borrowed money from them in the past or helped them structure a deal, or it's a friend of mine that, hey, I just sold a bunch of this and now I've got a bunch of cash just sitting around. I need your help getting it going. I get calls every week from people in a similar situation that need to get money out on deals.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So, I had Trevor look at a house and Sean that looked at a house that needed a lot of work, and I thought I was comparing, okay, what is it gonna be worth when it's done and where do they come at now? I think I learned that you guys do about 65% of what it's currently worth.
That's pretty well, depending on the remodel, but that's
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the projects that need a bunch of work, that's usually about what you're buying them at. By the way, Jenny, I've known Jenny for a long time. Jenny actually used to sell my dad houses back in the day. So we've known
I
Jenny. a
did
long
not
time.
know that. Yeah, I should have recruited him. Shut up, but instead. I'm just glad he's here.
Along those same lines, I'll just say, and you hate me for saying this, but there's times like I'll call Trevor and I'm like, hey, just looked at this house. This is what I think it's gonna need. This is what I think I would offer. And it's been just a nice relationship to be able to say like, do you see this as a good deal? Or would you look at it in a different way?
Right.
And he's great to help me kind of dissect it and say, it's gonna take this, it's gonna take this. Did you think through this? And kind of has helped give me a price point on a couple different ones
Yeah.
that I wanted to work through with him.
Yeah, so that kind of another note of that, like complete transparency. Like, yeah, I don't think there's ever been an agent that sold me a deal, and I buy a lot of deals from agents in the office, agents outside the office, just people that know kind of how my business works, what we're doing. And they'll call me up and be like, hey, I need you to come look at property, what time works. I don't think there's ever been an agent that sold me a deal that's like, that guy's shady.
No,
You got to be transparent.
Yeah.
I think as a whole, I think investors kind of have that, people think that we're shady, and I've got friends that 100% I know for a fact they've been involved in shady deals.
there's been some friends that we know mutually that were like, that guy's shady.
That guy's shady. You and I've had conversations
Yes.
about that. But you can't be shady because like Jenny, if I was shady with you on a deal, next time you find a deal, are you gonna call me?
Not at all.
Not at all. And so I would rather not buy a deal from you today to buy the deal next time. And I think that's pretty key because there's an agent over at a different brokerage in North Ogden, and I bought like 4 or 5 properties from her. Like I buy 1 or 2 a year, like religiously from her.
Well, I think that just it speaks to not even just the investment side of things, like you have to remember that your reputation matters in this industry.
100% it does.
And if you're known as that guy, then
Yeah.
people don't want to work with you.
Right.
And then they're only gonna want to bring you the deals that are like, "Oh, this is kind of shady. Let's take
Yeah.
it to Trevor," right? And that's
Yeah.
not the kind of business you want.
No, not at all. And I'm pretty open about the numbers. Like anybody that's walked a deal with me, I will tell you, this is why my number is here. And this is why, like with Brooke a couple weeks ago, we had a conversation around where my offer was and why it was where it was at. Because I want them to know, right? But at the same time, I want everybody to realize I'm doing this to make money.
Yeah.
This isn't a charity, and I'm pretty upfront about that. And if you're gonna do investment deals, they need to be profitable ones, or you're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
So,
Tell me a little bit about, because I know you and I have talked about this, but last.
let me stop for a second.
Yep.
Okay, I just had another thought. So
Okay.
we were talking about evaluating deals.
Yeah.
So I run them two ways.
Oh, yeah.
The first way is, what do the numbers look like if I'm going to need to resell this property in the next 30, 60, 90, 120 days, whatever, and work that math backwards and make sure that you're gonna be profitable. The other way that I look at is, what is this thing gonna rent for? And if it makes sense as a rental and as a flip, 100% guarantee you, even if that house sits vacant for a few months before my guys can get to it, I'm gonna buy that deal because it's adds to the strategy, right? I like having options, even on an investment property. I like being able to say, hey, I bought this as a flip, but I actually really like the house and the numbers make sense. I'm gonna keep this one. Or vice versa. I bought this one planning to renovate it as a rental. And now interest rates or whatever the case may be, it's not gonna hit the cash flow numbers that I want. Maybe we're gonna sell this one and get that cash back and take the profit and move it into another deal. So two ways
You're looking at
To
it
look
two
at.
ways. I
Yep.
like it.
before I buy any house.
How has your strategy shifted in the last 12 months? Because I know, obviously, you went into 2022 with a very clear plan in place of what it
Yeah.
was gonna look like, assuming it was gonna be a lot like 2021.
Yep.
Your strategy had shifted over the years leading up to that, and then specifically in the last 12 months, how has your investment strategy shifted?
Yeah, so we started keeping, quite a few more properties than what I normally keep. When I'm looking at a deal and I've got a bunch of deals that are just about done and I need to decide, am I gonna keep these or sell them? If I'm looking at a deal and it's like, hey, I can sell that thing right now. And not only am I going to get my 50, 60, 70,000 bucks, whatever cash I've put into this deal of my own money back, I'm gonna make 50,000 bucks. That's a lot of cash coming back, or I can keep it as a rental and maybe I make 300-400 bucks. That kind of, the $50,000, all of that lump pile of cash starts to look a lot more appealing than 300-400 bucks. So I've been trying to reprogram my brain a little bit the last couple of years into kind of going a lot more long-term minded. So I'm 2 years in to a 10-year plan to get to 168 homes that I own. And I'm on track.
I was like, what's
so
your
far.
current number?
I'm on track.
You're on track. I like it. I know you bought a ton this year specifically too.
Why 168?
So, that's part of an overall plan, the way that I don't think most of the time, and I'm trying to get better at it too, for what's best for me, like today or tomorrow, but I'm thinking 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road. What can I do now that I'm gonna do it almost subconsciously if I get good at that 20 years from now, my life is going to look ridiculously different than it does today. And so it's part of a bigger plan. But go ahead, Sean.
Share your bigger plan.
Yeah.
Okay. How long does this meeting go for? Okay, so my bigger plan, by the time I'm 55, I want to have a net worth of $250 million. The 168 helps get me there. I also get fairly aggressive with my financial advisor and what I'm doing over there. And I want to buy a ranch, and not like a small ranch, like a 20,000 acre ranch. Anyways, I don't know how many people in here get into doing land deals, but that's gonna be like a $50 million purchase by itself. So that's
You wanna go to Montana? I know relatives that have that.
in Montana. No, I want it to be in Utah. And I've got a reason for that too. Yancey could probably tell me why in Utah. Landowner tax. So anyways, that's on my list. So I've actually gone as far as to identify which ranch I want. And, we've been working, that particular ranch is currently owned by about 8 or 9 different, landowners. And we've been trying to piece it together and get some different options in place and stuff, so I can start chunking it out and getting it.
So when I say he doesn't think small and fund a small life, this is exactly what I mean. Like, he thinks a big vision, and I've seen like the written plan and he's got it in place. And one of the things that I love is like, he's identified, not just like, oh, I want to have a ranch someday. He's identified like, these are the specific ones that I'd like to look at. I remember years ago, this is why I started doing, you guys have heard me talk about a goal setting retreat that my husband and I do every year. And one of the things that we hadn't been doing at that level was being specific on what we wanted. And Jay and Wendy Papazan, I listened to them one time talk about, they're the ones that created the couples goal setting retreat. And she said that because of them sharing their 1 year, 5 year, 10-year, long-term vision with each other and being very clear on what it looked like. And it wasn't just like, let's have a ranch someday. It was like, I need a ranch with this amount of acres in this area of Texas, with this amount of things on it, with the hunting. She said it was such a clear picture, and we've been looking at it. It was part of our long-term, you know, she's like, from the time we were making no money, we had this very clear vision. And she says, one day my husband calls me and Jay's like, Wendy, you are not going to believe this. The ranch is for sale and we got to figure it out. And she said, had we not been having those conversations and being very clear on our vision, if he had called me out of nowhere and said, there's a $30 million ranch for sale and it's the one, she's like, or whatever the price was, I don't know the price. She says, I would have been like, you're insane. What are you talking about? And she said, but by them being that clear on their vision, does anyone doubt that Trevor's going to get it? Right? Because he's so crystal clear and he's got a game plan on where he wants to go. He's not living a small life. He's looking at it and saying, I want to have this big, huge life, and this is what it's going to take to fund it. And that helps you get up every day and grind.
Right. Well, the other part of that, like I mean, for me, like I love what we do. I thoroughly do. And especially like me getting more involved in the construction side and the investing side and stuff, like I love it. Like I geek off on it, but I don't want to do it forever.
Right.
Like, yeah, at the same time, like I'm a pretty lazy person overall. I don't want to do this forever. Like maybe another 20 years and I'm out.
Yeah.
So
So you got to plan for that.
you got to plan for that. Make it happen now. Like what can you do now today that maybe you just think of a deal differently? Like instead of chasing that $15,000 commission, take it and go do something else with it. Just plan like, or just get it like you never even got that commission and set it aside and go do something else.
Yeah, I love that. That is something too, and everything that you're looking at. So your traditional sales is always going to be somebody calling and saying, can you list my house or whatever? What would it look like if you bought that house instead? What
So-
would that need to look
So
like?
let me ask you this, because I don't represent a lot of people every year, and the ones that I do represent are other investor friends of mine and clients and such. How many of you guys have ever, and raise your hand, how many of you guys have ever represented yourself on a transaction? Troy, how did it go? Was it awesome?
Fine, awesome.
You're a terrible example.
Mine was relatively smooth, to be honest with you.
It went pretty smooth, pretty boring. Yeah, and the deal got done, and so,
Exactly.
yeah, have you ever had a client that you just like went like this with and canceled a deal, or maybe the deal didn't go well and you closed it and now you guys have never talked again because the deal had some hiccups? But that's not gonna happen with me because I represent myself.
You're always going to want to talk to
Yeah.
yourself the next day.
Always. And so I don't know. I think that a lot of agents miss a lot of opportunity. I know from experience they do, from not thinking a little differently and changing a little bit of their mindset to go create the wealth. I mean, so what's the plan if we quit selling houses? We sold houses for 30 years. We've made a ton of money while we did it. But if you weren't doing things today, what happens in 30 years from now? You know, you run out of money and you stop selling houses and those commission checks stop, then what? Now you're hosed. You're still selling houses, trying to sell enough a year to fund the rest of your life. That's terrible, man. Like that's no better than just having a W-2 job, in my opinion. And so what can you do? Like it doesn't take much, a deal a year for the rest of the career and you're done. You know, by the time you go to retire or want to quit, you say, hey, you know what, like selling houses sucks now. I'm kind of getting burned out. you can go do whatever you want because you no longer have to worry about how are you gonna fund your lifestyle. So.
I love that. Who are some people that you, that inspire you, or coaches that you have in your life, coaches, mentors, inspirations?
Okay, so coaches, this is probably not gonna be a super popular answer. I don't have a coach. What I do have is a network of other guys that run similar businesses to me, other multi-million dollar a year kind of businesses that are doing a bunch of real estate investing and stuff. And these are some of my best friends. I mean, we play golf together, we go on vacations together, our kids hang out. And so I've kind of created this little shell, a little sphere, Yancy, of very high level people that are doing a ton of deals and they're doing some awesome, super interesting deals and making a ton of money doing it. And when I have problems, or maybe hey, I really want you to help double check these numbers with me, or they call me up, and then we kind of can bounce some ideas off of each other and make some deals work. So that's kind of like it. I probably should get a coach, but that's, for me to this point, worked really well.
Yeah.
Having guys that are on speed dial that, you know.
I think the people, I was just gonna say, the people you surround yourself with matter, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
if
they
you've
do.
got people that are thinking like this and you're trying to think like this,
Yep.
it's a big difference.
Yep.
What's your favorite book you've read in the last 12 months? Cause I know you're a big reader.
Yeah, I do. I read a lot. One that I actually gave it to, I think Nick's got it right now. Profit First is probably the one of my all-time favorites. And the reason for that is because it kind of gets you out of that check to check mentality, right? Or sell to sell to sell, regardless what industry you're in. Because it teaches you and trains you to take some of that money and keep it, right? Like you got to pay yourself into your whatever it is fund that you want to do before all of the other stuff gets paid for. And if there's not enough money, then something else needs to get cut, but it's not you and your, you know what I mean? So anyways, I really like that book, and it's an easy read. It's pretty short.
Yeah, that is a great one. I like blocked. What is advice that you would give to someone who's just starting to build an investment portfolio?
So I do the same thing with my friends and my clients that are investors. You got to have a clear picture. You got to know what you want and what you got to identify the goals, right? So figure out what those goals are and what that freedom number of monthly cash flow is, and then build a plan around it. And identify it. Say, okay, if I'm going to make $500 a door on average, how many doors do I need to get to have $10,000 a month? And build a plan around it and say, okay, I'm not there yet. I had to do that a few years ago. When I started this, so like 2 years ago, I was like, holy smokes, like I got to buy 17 houses a year. Like, geez, not just buy them, but keep them. I got to keep 17 houses a year on average to hit my number. That's a lot. How am I going to be able to afford that when you're talking 20-25% down? And there are ways around that, by the way. So just identify it and then just break it backwards from there and go, okay, if I need to have $400,000 a year in cash that I can then just park in all these properties and not touch or access and things, and there are ways to access it too. How am I going to get that, first of all? And do I currently have it? No. Okay. What steps do I need to take now to go ahead and put myself in that position to where I'm going to be able to do it next year, 2 years from now, and start? Two things, one with the cash and one with the credit. Credit plays a big role in this industry. So, gotta get your credit where it needs to be and get your money right.
Yeah, I love that. I think that so many people avoid the topic of finance and budget, and they want to avoid the money conversation because it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to have the conversation. But the reality is that's what's going to fuel this big, beautiful dream that you have, right? But you didn't start out day one buying 17 properties a year. And I think people don't like in the lack of a plan, they don't do anything. So I think like exactly what you said, just like look at what it's going to look like and then put one step forward. It might take you 5 years to get to the point where you're saying, okay, now I'm on track to where I'm going to be, but you're better off than you were 5 years ago if you just do the little steps. I've seen people make great strides in their life starting with nothing or starting deeply in debt and they didn't do it just haphazardly.
I,
They
I
had
think,
a plan.
I think for me too, is you gotta break it down into baby steps.
Yes.
You know, like for me, one of my big things every year is to commit $500,000 towards my ranch. And so that's on top of all this other stuff and all the cash that I gotta park in all these properties. Where am I gonna get that? You know, and then break it down from there, because it's like, if I add up everything that I wanna do this year between my financial advisor, my long-term portfolio, committing funds to my ranch account, those different things, like that number is astronomical, that I have to find that type of money every year. And it gets a little bit like overwhelming, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do? And then you start breaking it down, breaking it backwards, and taking some of those steps every day. And it's not as bad as you know.
Yeah.
As you think.
I love it.
So are you, when you're buying your 17 properties a year, are you buying them under?
So those are rentals.
Are you buying them
When it-
under a
on
business, or
17.
are you buying them under like a Roth IRA?
I buy them all in my LLC, and then I'll move them out from there depending on what the strategy is. Yeah. But, so I try to keep between 12, 15 properties a year right now, because it's gonna snowball, right? Because so when I collect a rent check, that rent check doesn't come to my account to get spent, because I guarantee if you put it in my account, I will spend that. Guaranteed, I know for a fact I will. And so it goes to a completely separate account, and then that's where I fund a lot of the acquisitions is out of that account. And so it kind of snowballs. If I get 12 this year, I'll get 14 next year, you know, because there's gonna be more money in that account that I can then go out and do more damage.
I'm sure you're aware too, that you can go ahead and do a commercial portfolio loan and then stock them all into one, and then be able to take out more to buy your additional property.
Yeah.
Pay a property management company to manage all these?
No.
So that you're not managing it yourself?
No, I manage it myself.
And then they can be very. That's right. Those are good, big too.
How are you gonna manage 168?
I'm not going to, so year after next on my business plan, I have to have a full-time property manager. So like at my construction stuff, so my fix and flip business, we're buying like 25, 30 houses a year in that business. And then I'll cherry pick some out of there that I'm gonna keep and stuff, but I don't do anything in that business for the most part. Everything's set up. I've got a team of guys that work for me full time that just go, and they know what I want, they know what I expect. And it kind of, sometimes we run into a few issues, and we've got to kind of find ways to, or maybe I wanted to replace all of the sheetrock. And then we have an issue, and we're not going to be able to replace all the sheetrock. And so there's other things that we have to do to try to cut some costs and stuff. But those guys are really good about doing that kind of stuff, and pretty much just kind of, I mean, not leaving me alone, but they only really call me when they've got like big problems that they can't fix themselves. And so it's completely hands off for me at this point. I did go work on a house yesterday. But that's a completely different deal. That's one that my brother's involved in, and we're just trying to keep it cheap and have some time. So I went over there and did some stuff. But prior to that, I can't remember the last time I went and worked on a house.
That's awesome.
Love that. Does anybody else have questions for Trevor?
Your
Last
last,
chance.
well, sorry.
Jenny's
no,
like,
no.
I do.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I love
because
it.
Trevor helped me with one a few years ago, a couple years ago, remember that house on 23rd?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so, I had a client that came to me and said, Jenny, do you want this house? I don't wanna have, you can have it for what we paid for, it's been such a pain in our butt, sounds like gold, right? But I bounced the, numbers off of Trevor, more like I watched him bounce them around in his head. And it wouldn't have penciled for me to keep it. And it wouldn't have benefited the seller. So I upped my commission to 9%. I gave 3% to the buyer's agent, and I oversaw the whole construction side of things. I had a contractor that was willing to be paid at closing. And at the end, it was really cool because my client went from not making anything to, they made 60,000, and then they asked, let me see that. I just want to make sure that Jenny got paid what we wanted her to. And I wouldn't have had the courage to ask for that had I not understood that kind of thinking with Trevor pointing it out. So
Well, you got to make a win-win, right? So
Yeah.
if it's not going to be a good deal for you, it's not a good deal for me, because I want to buy all of your things, you know? And that one wasn't gonna be a good deal, and so but anyway, so. But
Yeah.
there's a million ways to make money in real estate when you're on the investor side. I mean, we've got my little tight group of guys that I run around with, like, it's kind of funny, we've got a group text and somebody will be like, hey, I need to fund 250 grand by Monday, who's got some cash sitting around? And it's like, in 2 or 3 texts, we've got the deal funded, and so that's awesome, so it's just creating that and being in that environment to where
That's my husband's worst
is what,
nightmare. That's my husband's worst nightmare.
what's his first name?
Trying to like, people just giving people money.
Oh, no, well, so it's not
It's
just
not just like
giving.
giving it.
No, it's not like giving money on a credit card, right? But we do lend a lot of money back and forth. Now, that's when you're borrowing money for these deals, like you gotta make sure you know what you're doing.
Right.
And in fact, if you don't know what you're doing and you want to get into it, go find somebody that's doing it and shadow them on some deals. Bring them a deal and say, hey, I've got this deal. You can do it. You can have it. Let me get involved and see what's going on, because it is like buying a house on a credit card.
Right.
I mean, it gets expensive. When you're talking 2 and 12 and you're funding a $500,000 deal, you're 10 grand upfront and another 5,000 every single month. So if you hold that property for 6 months, you just paid 40 grand,
Right.
to hold that property. And so you gotta,
Crazy.
yeah.
A question in the chat, how does it feel to be the second coolest Scheffler in the office?
Oh, I wonder who that came from.
Who was it? Was that Sadie?
I don't know, couldn't say it because
That's all right. He is pretty cool.
Hey, anything else for Trevor? Trevor, anything else?
I don't think so. So we got some more questions.
Okay.
I'm an open book though, so if you
Yeah.
run into, for the most part, if you have a deal that you want me to help look at with you, let me know.
Are you open to JVs?
Yep. If the deal, I'm open to any deal if it makes sense, right? Like, yeah, I just put, so like any house, any condition, they don't scare me. Like, yeah, I bought one last year that on one house, we put $230,000 renovations into it. Like they don't scare me. We rebuilt like more than half of the house, framing and everything. Like I would have been better to tear it down and rebuild it. But I'm a numbers guy. I'm a deal guy and I'm a numbers guy. As long as the deal makes good financial sense, then I am going to want to get involved.
So I love that he just said that. And this is one thing that I think if you're thinking in an investment standpoint, you've got to shift your mindset, because a lot of times in real estate, we think in an emotional capacity, or
Yeah.
we want to make something work so bad
Yeah,
that we're willing to compromise and bend the parameters that we want it to work. And in an investment property, you cannot do that. You
no,
have to have your rules
Yeah.
and you have to live by your rules. You can't want the deal to work more than the numbers make sense.
no,
right?
yeah, that's how you end up losing money and get hurt, is by trying to force the deal. And so I don't care. Like if I make an offer on a deal and I don't get the deal, I don't get too hung up about it, because it doesn't matter. There's going to be another deal. If Nick and I just looked at one last week that, same thing, like we could have got the deal, but it was like, I don't want it that bad. What it would have taken to get it would have put us in a weird spot. So we passed on the deal. You gotta have, when you're going through and creating what kind of strategy you want, you need to make sure that you are setting some parameters and sticking to them. Don't buy stuff that doesn't fit your box, because you're gonna get hurt. You're gonna get burned bad. And it's very easy to lose a lot of money in this industry if you're not taking the proper steps.
Okay, awesome. Was this helpful?
Yeah.
You guys covered that with me.